Hi guys, welcome to today's video and welcome to another WWE reaction. Alright, this video is by Wrestling with Andy and it's called Sidekicks, Wrestling's Right Hand Man. I love that on the thumbnail we had Ludwick Kaiser and I want to learn more about him. I think that he's really cool, but he's shadowed with Gunther and the whole Imperium, and I genuinely always wondered, like, what is the point of him there? Just to announce Gunther in the ring? Like, why is he there? So let's learn more about the sidekicks of WWE.
Say that every good hero needs a good sidekick. That's why Batman has Robin, Han Solo has
That's
Chewbacca,
so true.
and Frodo
Who's my
Baggins has
sidekick?
Samwise
Are you my
Gamgee.
sidekick?
Hell,
I need
even
sidekick.
villains need someone to back them up from time to
Did
time.
I just call myself a good
something which
character?
can be seen in Captain Hook's Smee and Dr. Frankenstein's Igor. And of course,
Oh my God,
wrestling is
Igor.
no different when it comes to this,
Igor.
as their heroes and villains have long had other halves helping them to do their thing. But who are the best examples of this? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at right now.
Okay,
starting with
before we go into the video, I have to mention the ones that I know about now, because I don't know about the ones from the 90s, 2000s, 2010s. I just started watching like 2 years ago. So we have a couple of sidekicks. I don't know if Piper is the sidekick of Chelsea or Chelsea is the sidekick of Piper, but I do have a feeling that Piper is the side chick of Chelsea, because Chelsea has more story. Like, she talks more on the mic, and I feel like she fights more, but I'm not really sure. I feel like she always tells Piper to fight her battles. And I think it's a really cool combination. Them two together should make an actual sitcom in Britain or whatever, like walking around living the life and stuff. I would watch that. Chelsea is so freaking entertaining. Who else? Is Jacob Fatu an actual sidekick from the bloodline? Like, I don't know, but he adds so much to it. Like, Solo Sikoa would be completely done without Jacob nowadays. Who else? Is Dom a sidekick? I don't know, because he is right now he's in a Judgment Day, like in a faction. I don't know if they're gonna mention him as a sidekick, but let me check the actual thumbnail of this video. Oh, Ludwick Kaiser is actually a really good sidekick for or a part of the he's a part of Imperium, and I think he's really good when he announces Gunther in the ring and he has the accent, the German accent, because you know Gunther is Austrian and they have German accents, so basically, or Austrian accents, and it adds up to the whole character, you know. I don't know about the rest of the people on that. Like Batista, I didn't even know he was a sidekick ever. So let's go and learn more about that.
Shawn Michaels and his former sidekick, Diesel. Yes, well, he may have later gone on to bigger and better things, what with him becoming a multiple-time world champion in both WWF and WCW.
No way, yeah.
During the early days of Kevin Nash's run with WWF, he wasn't treated like the star attraction. Rather, he was treated like the muscle to a much more popular and much more over performer. Who was this performer? Shawn Michaels, of course. And as it happens, it was HBK who was legitimately responsible for bringing Big Sexy in as his heavy in 1993, as after seeing what he was managing to do down in Atlanta with limiting gimmicks such as Oz and Vinny Vegas, Shawn went straight to Vince McMahon and convinced him he needed to bring this giant from Detroit into the WWF. And we all know what a great decision this was in hindsight, because for the next few years on and off, two dudes with attitudes, as they would come to be known, absolutely dominated the WWF main event scene. And the way they did that, at least during the early days of their time together, was for Diesel to always make sure he was there to help his partner get a win in big singles competition no matter what. As we alluded to a moment ago, though, over time, the dynamics of this partnership would change, as come 1995, Diesel would be the WWF champion, with this causing a sense of jealousy to grow within his partner. And so it was that the downfall of two dudes with attitudes happened soon thereafter, and the hero-sidekick relationship, which had once existed between them, dissolved into nothing. Luckily, though, this wasn't the only sidekick the Heartbreak Kid would have over the years. No, not long after that, a new Clique member would emerge as his second, and this Clique member was none other than our next subject, Triple H.
Triple H is
It's easy to look at the wrestling landscape as it exists today and think that Triple H is the clear leader of this duo. Hell,
Literally.
he's the head booker of the entire WWE.
If anyone is with Shawn.
And as for Shawn Michaels, well, he has a great role too, but it's the smaller role of head booker of NXT. Back in the 90s, though, the entire dynamic was flipped, as that was the period when Shawn was arguably the best wrestler in the world and probably the biggest star Vince McMahon had. So it should go without saying that he was the clear focus here then, and this left Paul Levesque, someone who was still a relative rookie at the time, to play the role of Sidekick instead.
But maybe because he was a rookie
and he wasn't
at
just
the
a
time,
sidekick on screen either.
Takes some time.
Whenever the cameras stopped rolling and D-Generation X went back to their off-screen lives, the game would be there for his best friend at all times in real life too, something which was particularly important in the mid to late 90s, as that's when HBK's addiction issues were at their worst. That's right, there were points during their early relationship where Trips was more of a handler for the champ than anything else, and this eventually caused a fracturing of their friendship both on-screen and off. Thankfully though, as the years went on, they would be able to repair this. The only difference by this point was that with Triple H by then being more important in WWE's hierarchy on account of his position in management, he was no longer a sidekick. And this isn't the only tale of members of DX having a sidekick, as well it happened after she left the group. The exact same thing could be said about our next subject, Chyna, and her backup, the Cat.
Chyna.
That's right. Well, it's not the most well-remembered part of her career today. Back in 1999, the ninth wonder of the world had become such a phenomenon that the decision was made to give her her own sidekick. After all, if some of the men on the roster could have one, then why shouldn't she? She was a bigger star than half the roster, so it only made sense. The only question then would be, who was this sidekick going to be, with the answer to that eventually being revealed as Stacey Carter. Who was Stacey Carter? Well, she was the, at the time, girlfriend of Jerry Lawler. And because she was dating the King, it didn't take long for her to be introduced to the world of wrestling and fall in love with it. So once the bug bit her, her other half was able to get her a job with the WWF as
when
the
he would
mini-me
purr,
of
right,
sorts
every
to
time
Chyna,
she comes in.
a role she quickly excelled at. Sure, you could argue Chyna didn't need any backup as she was already tough and imposing enough. But that didn't mean the relationship between two characters wasn't fun for as long as it lasted anyway.
To be honest, like, I never understand having a sidekick who is like smaller than you and like literally there is no way they can defend you. Only maybe if that sidekick is someone who is like with the mind like really smart and knows how to like speak on the mic and knows how to elevate you in other ways, not physical ways. If you're already like Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman, like that is that's what I can see, you know. But at the same time, that is not a sidekick. Paul Heyman is not fighting for him his battles, but you know what, words can be sharper than swords. Is that the saying?
The Cat, as she was now being called, had to do was stand next to her leader during her entrance, decked out in similar clothing and with similar stances, and fans were all in on the entire thing.
Okay.
That said, as time went on and Vince McMahon started seeing more use in the Cat elsewhere on the show, the relationship she had with Chyna would begin to grow less and less important, with all of this eventually leading to the two parting ways entirely, as the ninth wonder of the world left the company, all while her sidekick moved over to do her own thing. But the Cat isn't the only female sidekick that succeeded in WWE. No, in modern times, we have lots of great examples of this.
I love this.
You only have to look
combo
to our next subject, Chelsea Green, and her heavy Piper Niven.
So Piper is
Chelsea
the sidekick.
Green has become one of the best women stars on modern-day WWE TV. And this is because, with her comedic stylings turning her into something of a cult hero in recent months, the heel's profile has been able to rise higher than it ever has done before. Of course, it's helped her case that she's got a great second to play off of throughout this period, with that being the Scottish powerhouse Piper Niven. After all, when you're talking about the former NXT UK star, it's not hard to see why WWE's resident Karen has a much easier time in reaching the top. It doesn't matter if it's been in her matches where Piper's been able to serve as the muscle, or in segments where she's played the perfect straight woman, to Green's more outlandish antics, the pair have been a perfect fit thus far. And this is exactly why, as it stands today, they can proudly call themselves one-time women's tag team champions, with a high likelihood that there will be more reigns with these particular belts in the duo's future too.
Dude, did you see the trash match? Chelsea is now really stinky, okay? Nobody wants to hang out with her.
The only question we have now is how long the Scottish sidekick will be happy to play second fiddle to her more charismatic
Piper
leader.
Deserves more,
After all,
I feel like.
it's not like there isn't a history of these sort of relationships falling apart as a result of jealousy over time, something our prior example of Shawn Michaels and Diesel prove. Until that happens, though, if it happens, we'll be happy to watch Chelsea Green be her usual grating self, and we'll be happy to watch Piper Niven back her up the whole time.
The thing about
and
Chelsea, she's a
so
good
happy
wrestler
to watch this
too.
is because they represent one of the great examples of a wrestler knocking a comedy gimmick right out of the park. But Chelsea Green isn't the only one to do this. No, another example of a superstar getting fans on side with comedy can be seen in our next subjects, Doink and Dink the Clowns. Yes, many fans of the new generation era look back at this one now fondly with great nostalgia. Sure, the original recipe Doink was a fantastically creepy villain.
Dude, especially like back then, if this was in the 90s, there was this clown killer. I don't know his name, but you can Google. He was like, he killed so many gay guys and he hid them inside his house, in the walls, in the basement, in pieces. And literally he would do so many devastating things to them before even killing them. Like, it's crazy clown. And he had this gimmick of being a clown, you know, like, and how did they come up with this at the same time when this murderer was out there doing what he was doing, or maybe a couple of years before or after? Like, it's crazy, it's crazy.
One of the few genuinely scary things the company produced in that particular era, but once Matt Bourne stopped playing him, and the whole thing turned into more of a lighthearted babyface children's entertainer, and it quickly became more of a comedy character.
Why would this be?
That said,
why children
even if
like
this
clowns?
incarnation of Doink wasn't
They're
quite
scary.
as critically acclaimed as the original was, it would stick around for a few years, longer than the initial version ever did. And during that second run, it was decided that a sidekick should be brought in to liven the act up even more, with this sidekick being the Mini-Me-esque Dink. And we mean Mini-Me literally this time, as Dink was pretty much a carbon copy of Doink, just small-sized instead. How did this new part of the clown act get over with fans? Well, great, with the younger audience at least. And the whole thing reached its peak at Survivor Series 1994 when, in a 4-on-4 elimination match, Doink and Dink enlisted two further little people in clown makeup named Pink and Wink to help them do battle against Jerry Lawler, Queasy, Cheesy, and Sleazy.
Little people matches.
Yes, the pairing of Doink and Dink
Have you ever seen one?
deserves a
Which
spot
one
in
is your
today's video
favorite?
because it was such a notable part of the company during that time period.
I want to check
But let's
one.
move
I remember
away
there
from
was
the new
like mini
generation era
Batista
for now and
and
on to a
stuff.
different time. The ruthless aggression era, to be
Oh,
precise,
Batista.
as that's
I
where
just
we
mentioned
find our
him.
next subject, Brother Devon and his sidekick,
dude.
Deacon Batista.
Okay.
That's right, before he was Dave Batista, star of movies like Guardians of the Galaxy, Dune, and Glass Onion. Hell, before he was ever Batista.
Honestly, I have to admit, he's like one of the more variety kind of stars or actors in Hollywood that come from a pro wrestling backstage. Like The Rock is always The Rock in every movie. John Cena is kinda John Cena in every movie, like the comedic character. But Batista is so, like, he has such a variety of characters that he can portray. And I see him like really going into acting. Have you seen his physiques now? That like he really completely gave up on pro wrestling, which is so sad because I've never seen him in the ring. I've just watched historically what he has done, but I've never seen him live or anything like that. And I don't think that he will ever come back. Like, he is like 100% a Hollywood star now.
Time world champion and one of the biggest stars in the wrestling industry. The DC native was first finding his feet on the main roster in WWE in a far less glamorous role. But then when you're playing the role of lackey to the Jannetty of the Dudley Boys, it's hard not to feel like this is a humble beginning. Luckily for Big Dave though, even if the role he had here was pretty bad, it gave him the foot in the door that he needed to succeed later on down the line, because while playing the mute deacon to Brother Devon's corrupt church minister, his obvious star power still managed to shine through. And that was why, even when Devon came out to the ring for another promo lambasting fans, there was something to be taken from the gimmick, and that was that this Deacon Batista guy had something to him. Not that we knew just how much he had to him at the time, of course, with this probably being at least partially because all he got to do was stand around, put on his best mean face, and occasionally beat up a jobber. But as time went on, the level of his talent would become clearer and clearer. In fact, so bright would his star be shining just a few years later, the idea that the animal had once been nothing more than a sidekick to Devon Dudley would have seemed crazy for a new viewer, because by then, Devon was very much back in the tag team division with Bubba Ray, and Batista was one of the top stars in the entire company. That said,
Yep.
in order to get to this point, he did need his initial run as a lackey because it gave him a chance to learn on the job from someone who was a lot more experienced than him.
I feel like a lot of
and it
sidekicks
wasn't like the whole act hurt Devon too much either.
do that
No,
too.
he always had the Dudley boys to fall back on. But what about another memorable
The
leader
stepping stone for
sidekick
them to
pairing of
learn.
the Ruthless Aggression era? One which happened over on Raw. How would they fare? Well, to find out the answer to that, we have to take a look at our next subjects, the Hurricane and Rosey.
Rosey.
Now, when you talk about heroes and sidekicks, it's easy to jump into superheroes in your mind right away. And this pairing
Especially
played
if
right
you
up to
have a
that
sup-
because
yeah,
back in the early
you're dressed like a
2000s,
superhero.
the Hurricane was WWE's #1 crime fighter. So obviously then, with him being that top caped crusader, it only made sense that a more junior masked Avenger would want to join him in it.
To be honest, seeing heroes and villains in WWE, even dressed up as heroes and villains, is completely normal. It is so acceptable. I would come and say that 90% of WWE fans are also a fantasy or science fiction fan, whether it is DC fan or Marvel fan or Star Wars fan. I would honestly say that they, even as kids, at least at one point in their life, they loved these comic characters and these heroes and villains because it is such a similar world. And no wonder a lot of these stars go and act in such movies and become like Peacemaker, you know, or what do we have The Rock as? Oh yeah, that guy that movie that failed 2 years ago or whatever. But this is literally what I'm saying. And Batista as well in the Guardian of the Galaxy. Like, it is so normal for them. They belong in that universe. At least that's how I feel and what I think. So let me know in the comments down below what you think. Recently, if we have a character that is impersonating a superhero or a villain, in my opinion, Cody Rhodes with his dress is, with the way like his costume is and everything, he's representing America, of course, but also somehow he is the good guy or the hero of The Boys character, the villain Homelander. Is it just me? Am I the only one who sees this? Because I think I've seen people connecting those together, but he's like the good guy. He's not Homelander, like the bad guy. Imagine him turning a villain. He would be a perfect Homelander in WWE. But yeah, let's continue watching. I love to talk so much. I should like go live and just talk with you about random stuff.
Cause was Rosey. Sure, there
Rosey.
might not have been anything about Rosey which made him an obvious choice for the role of Jimmy Olsen to the Hurricane Superman. After all, prior to donning the cape himself, the thing the San Francisco native had been most known for was being a member of 3 Minute Warning, Eric Bischoff's pair of heavies during the early 2000s Raw. But
really
once
strong.
he had a change of heart and began fighting for truth, justice, and the American way instead, it quickly became apparent he fit into this new team
The
like a
American
glove.
way.
In fact, so well
funny.
did Rosey fit here, during the time he was acting as the Hurricane's sidekick, the pair would win tag team gold together, something 3 Minute Warning were never able to do. So it just goes to show, sometimes being a hero instead of a villain can really pay off.
Oh yeah.
And even
It
when they
depends
weren't
who you
holding
are
gold
and your
together, the
personality.
duo of the Hurricane and Rosey were continuing to find success in other areas too, such as the time they added a third member to their stable, their own version of Batwoman, in Super Stacy. That said, while Stacy Keibler might have been a fun addition to the crime-fighting team, it's Rosey who will always be remembered as the main second to what Shane Helms was doing back then. Hell, it's probably the thing the Anoa'i family member is best remembered for today, outside of being the brother of Roman Reigns. And it's the era of Roman Reigns we're traveling to next as it happens, because that's where we'll find our next great sidekick, the man who always stands by Gunther's
Ludwick
side,
Kaiser.
Ludwig Kaiser.
Yeah.
Yes, whether it's been during their time
Genau.
together on the European indie scene, their parallel runs on NXT and NXT UK, or their spells on the WWE main roster, the careers of Gunther and Ludwick Kaiser have always been closely intertwined. But then why wouldn't they be, as with each coming from the same area of the world and with both sharing a very similar philosophy on what makes wrestling great, it should be no surprise that they've bonded thoroughly. That said, for all the time they've been associated, whether it be as part of Ringkampf in Germany's West Side Extreme Wrestling or Imperium in the WWE system, the hierarchy between the two has always been clear, and that hierarchy is that Gunther is the leader and Kaiser is the sidekick. Why is this the way things have gone for them? Well, because for as great as Kaiser is, Gunther is one of the greatest wrestlers alive and the
Of all
current
time,
World Heavyweight
honestly.
Champion. Not that this has meant
Honestly.
his second has been completely overshadowed, though. No, even when he's doing his boss's
guy.
bidding, the German has always been able to make himself stand out too as someone with an incredible level of talent in his own right, with this perhaps never being clearer than during the recent episode of SmackDown held in his home country, which saw him challenge LA Knight for the United States title.
Yep.
Still, even when he's doing this, he always makes sure Gunther is happy above all else.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't he?
There was a moment. Did you see that one moment where we thought that he's going to turn on Gunther and he didn't? So maybe this is foreshadowing. Maybe something is going to happen in the future. I feel like Ludwig deserves more than just being a sidekick, but he's not on the level of Gunther for
What
sure.
happens to people who disappoint
At least not
General?
yet.
We remind you about the beatdown that befell Giovanni Vinci when he didn't perform up to Gunther's standards. An attack so bad it forced the Italian to leave for a while and return instead on SmackDown under his brand new
and get
gimmick.
destroyed.
And we don't need to remind Ludwick Kaiser of this either. He knows all too well how important it is to keep Gunther happy, and that's why he's such a perfect sidekick for him, perhaps the best sidekick in all of modern-day wrestling, in fact. Is he the best sidekick, though? Well,
I don't
that's
know,
something to
is
debate
he?
as time goes on. Some might think yes, while others might think that our next subject deserves such a moniker instead, Big E, the man who once served as the backup to Dolph Ziggler. That's right.
Yeah, I
and
haven't
he's
even
best known
seen Dolph
today as being
Ziggler. Like the
one-third of
moment
the
I started
New
watching,
Day
he left.
and one of the nicest guys in wrestling all round. During his early days on the main roster, Ettore Iwan actually had a much different role. Sure, he was still part of a trio, but this time he wasn't the smiling, happy-go-lucky babyface he would later morph into. No, back in the early 2010s, he was tasked with playing the mostly silent heavy to Dolph Ziggler and, to a lesser extent, AJ Lee. How would Big E fare in this role? Pretty great as it happened, because despite being a naturally bubbly person, he was also able to put on a very intimidating presence. And this worked out gangbusters for not only him, but his leader Ziggler back between 2012 and 2013. As well, the duo were affiliated with AJ. Dolph would go on to become a two-time World Heavyweight Champion, all while Lee would become a one-time Divas Champion. Yes, it's true that Big E himself would never win any gold at this time, but then it wasn't the role he served on the show back then. Rather, he was there to do what any good sidekick does, lift his leader up higher. And it's not like the Floridian wouldn't get his roses as time went on, because once the trio of Ziggler, E, and Lee split up in 2013, the big man would move on to even better things, namely a partnership with Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, which saw him become an 8-time tag team champion. That run with the WWE title in 2021. As to what happened to the other two members of the stable, well, Dolph Ziggler will remain in a mid-card role with the WWE up until the point he left in 2023, and from there went on to places like TNA Wrestling. And when it comes to AJ Lee, she'd hang around for a few more years, all before ultimately retiring in 2015 on account of a neck injury. But not every sidekick has to be an in-ring wrestler. No, sometimes a great sidekick can be a manager. And another great example of this can be found in Ricardo Rodriguez and his time spent playing the role of Alberto Del Rio's second back during early 2010s WWE. Okay, we know technically Ricardo was a personal ring announcer, but the point remains the same. He was a non-wrestler in the WWE who served as a fantastic accessory to what his boss was doing. Hell, a big part of the reason Alberto Del Rio got as over as he did during this period was because there was a certain novelty in having him be announced out to the ring by someone else. Really, it went a long way towards making him feel special and fit his aristocrat character perfectly. So it shouldn't be surprising to learn then that with Ricardo Rodriguez by his side serving as a hype man of sorts, the San Luis Potosí native went on to win 4 world titles in WWE. That said, as with all good things, this partnership had to come to an end eventually, and the end for the Del Rio-Rodriguez pairing happened in 2013 when the leader violently attacked his sidekick after he accidentally cost him a match against Rob Van Dam. Obviously then, once he returned, he would no longer be the announcer to Alberto, and this meant he'd go on to have a spell managing RVD in one of the most wacky odd couple pairings in WWE history. After this ran its course, though, he wouldn't last much longer in the company, as he would be released on July 30th, 2014, and from there returned to the indie circuit where he remains to this day.
Oh, no.
Yes, today's subjects truly are some of the
that's
best
a downgrade.
sidekicks the wrestling industry has ever produced.
But it doesn't matter.
And what a group
If
they
you're
are,
happy where
with
you
them
are, that's
all
what
in
matters.
their own way, proving that every great hero or villain is always going to need some backup if they really want to reach that next level inside of the squared circle.
Oh my god. I can see my friend Samra as my sidekick. Literally, we had some videos together back in the day, like Try Not to Laugh. And I would go live streaming and we would play video games together and stuff. And these were like the craziest streams and the best videos that I had like the most fun making. It's with my friends and one of them with her. And this is the thing, like, I feel like it elevates my craziness when I am with people that in real life as well, I am so comfortable being with. And it makes it easier that I am not just talking to myself in my own room in front of a camera, but I'm like actually engaging with someone else. And you can see my personality more, my bubbly personality or whatever. And the craziness all over. Like the amount of times she would like literally facepalm because of my behavior in front of you guys, and she'd be like, I can't believe I'm her friend, like and she still loves me and she still hangs out with me, you know, like that is the thing. I think sidekicks are very important, and people who elevate you and makes your personality even like they don't dim your light, they make it shine harder. And this is what a lot of people need in their life. Not a lot of people can do it solo, and I feel like I'm one of those people. So it's very hard for me to do this by myself, but who knows, maybe in the future there will be someone else. Maybe my baby my baby grows up and he's a WWE fan and we go together into this world. Oh my god, yes, that would be a dream. But I'm not forcing anyone to do anything. I will be there for him and in the future for anyone out there the way they want to live their life. If you're happy, that's what matters. But yeah, all right, that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want me to react to a video that you recommend, let me know in the comments. Write react and then the title of the video. If you want more WWE content, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/supportbunny. I upload there all recaps from SmackDown, NXT, and Raw Lives, and as well as documentaries and movies and series. Right now, I finished the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix, and I'm watching The Queen of Villains, which is a Japanese a Japanese villain character. It's a true story about a Japanese pro wrestler girl, and I just watched the first episode, so it's really, really good. I loved it, and it's set up in Japan, and I'll be watching the second episode today. So yeah, if you want to check that out on my Patreon, make sure to go and check it out. Patreon.com/supportbunny. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.